are you ready? Okay, can we start with a roll call, please?
Zimmerman? Woolery? Here. Miller?
Here.
Carroll?
Here.
Bernstein? Leader absent. Deisler?
Here.
Zink?
Here. Great, thank you very much. We're going to open up the meeting with public comment. Any member of the public wishing to address the board for an item that's not on today's agenda. Seeing no one stand, I'll close public comment. Return back to item B, which is approval of the minutes for the board meeting on August 16th. Do we have a first and a second for that? For the minutes? First by Aaron, second by Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think there's an error on the, those minutes are actually today instead
Oh,
of
you caught that.
the previous.
It is going to be the minutes for August
2nd.
2nd. Okay, we have a first by Aaron and a second by Brian. Any comments about the minutes? Anything under general business? Item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, item 5, item 6, item 7, okay. Back up one quick second. I had a comment on item 4, actually. Not item 4. I lost my notes. Wait a sec. I'm sorry, folks. You printed that out? Oh, thank you. Under item 2, I'd like to make a change on item 2. Thank you. Item 2 on the vote, it's called for the action. It was by Miller and Woolsey. It was 3 yes, 2 no, and I would like to be abstain, if we can reflect that in the minutes. And that's otherwise we would have had a tie vote. And item 7, which is Harbor Hills, it's 1213 Harbor Hills Drive. I wanted to add a comment, if the board was okay with that, that it was the understanding that this project would be turned back to the full board prior to going on to Planning Commission. Because I asked the question of Dan, planner, if this project would go, and he says if that was our interest, if that was our desire, and then the applicant said that they were planning on returning back to full board, but we didn't add it to the motion. Do people vaguely remember that?
Yes.
So if we can add just a staff comment that it's the board's understanding that this project will return. Okay, perfect. So those are the only 2 comments that I had. Does anybody else have anything? Cool. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes as amended. And thank you for this, Gloria. On to the consent calendar for August 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For consent last week, we had item A, 356 El Cielito Road, got a final approval as submitted of their architecture, and they'll be coming back later with landscaping. That was the T-Fire rebuild. Item B, 874 West Mountain Drive was postponed 1 week. Item C, 501 Conejo Road was continued 1 week. Item D, 447 Conejo Road was continued to the staff hearing officer. Item E, 317 Northridge Road got a preliminary approval with conditions. And consent last week was reviewed by Paul Zink and Denise Flory.
Okay. Any other comments about that? Do we have a first and second to accept the consent minutes? First by Denise. Second by Glenn. Any other comments? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, for consent calendar for today, August 16th, we had item A, 874 West Mountain Drive, got a preliminary approval as submitted. Item B, 468 Conejo Road was continued to the staff hearing officer. Item C, 501 Conejo Road, it was a review after final, got a it was approved with conditions. Consent today was reviewed by Glenn Deisler and Denise Woolery.
Okay, thank you. Any comments about the consent minutes? Do I have a first? First by Denise, second by Mr. Miller. All right. Call for vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That's the consent calendar. Moving on to announcements, requests by applicants, continuance and withdrawals.
Mr. Chair, we're going to have a staff change, staffing the SFDB. This will be my last SFDB meeting. I'll be switching to the ABR. And I think you all know Michelle Bedard, who's been staffing the ABR. She'll be coming to the SFDB.
Oh,
So we'll make sure you have contact information. So if you have any questions about projects, you can contact Michelle.
okay. Wonderful. I hope this is a move up, or is it a move sideways? It's just a flip. All right. Anything else? If not, subcommittee reports. I had a question for staff, and that had to do with 2222 Santa Barbara Street.
Right. Ms. Ramon's here to tell you about that project.
Yes, Mr. Zink had asked me to research specifically what happened at a project that was before the board several months ago, and it involved a extensive remodel of a home on 2222 Santa Barbara Street. And actually I've discovered during the plan check stage, building and safety triggered extensive structural upgrades to the building, which necessitated the building to be demolished in order to meet the new structural codes. And staff subsequently allowed the demolition and reconstruction to move forward on the condition that they build back exactly what they had. And that brought the question up as to whether or not that necessitated a re-review of the entire residence. Now, what's unusual about that project is they had actually come before you several weeks ago to propose additional changes in the design involving a zoning modification. And at that time, this board was emphatic that they should be reviewing the entirety of the project, not having it sort of piecemealed in for review. Now, they've chosen not to move forward to that zoning modification under the impression that they could move forward and not have to deal with this board and any new demands on their project by moving forward with their approved project. Now, Mr. Zink asked, well, what's the connection to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future and with other projects, and to make sure that staff clearly understands that this board may have an ability to review the entirety of a structure when that happens, and which is probably the best thing to do, to actually bring a project back when you actually know that the entirety of the structure is going to be reconstructed, and you'd have more ability to control what gets reconstructed. If for some reason you don't like what's existing, there is an ability for you to actually ask for changes. That's a little bit controlled when they claim that the entirety of the residence is going to remain, and that this is strictly an addition, a project that involves an addition. So I did consult the city attorney on this project, and at this point, because there's not a failure of review, there was a level review. He's more inclined to not ask that the project return back for ABR. I think he's prepared to revise our procedures to make sure this doesn't happen again on other projects. So it's very important for you to understand when someone does an extensive second floor to either as part of the final review process understand whether demolition is to occur. And that's our failure too. We don't normally put that the entirety of the structure is going to be demolished unless we're very aware or they disclose it. So that's the reality now to meet new codes, that there might be a need to demolish structures, or it's easier for contractors to meet the structural requirements to demolish it and start new, rather than trying to retrofit first floor levels. So I'm in the process of changing our process, so staff's very aware that during our internal review process, even during plan check, if that happens, we would actually ask the project to come back for additional review, and then we would notice as a demolition reconstruction of a residence. And that would give it clear understanding that you have that purview on the existing residence that's to be reconstructed. So I know it might not satisfy you on the 2222, but I think we're going to be more clear in the future on this issue.
If I can add two points that I see that are kind of a hiccup with that. One of them is, what if the original house that was there, the one-story house, was an S-tile, even though it's in the Mission Special Design District? The addition in the back was whatever it was. Now that it's demolished and being reconstructed, they're going to reconstruct what was lost, which could have been a single-story house with an S-tile, which is something we try to avoid.
Right.
And now there's no review of that.
Well, no, there would have been if, under our design criteria for administrative approvals, we are supposed to approve projects that meet our guidelines.
Okay.
And if you can cite something on the approvals that do not meet our guidelines, then we could actually.
Then the second thing is the detailing, that there's like a little cantilevered balcony off to the side and the window details, the things that we kind of zero in on. I don't know what the house that was lost looked like, in the sense that maybe it was 2x4 construction with windows that are basically flush versus being 2x6 recessed a smidgen. And I don't know what's being proposed, but those are the little tiny tweaks that is staff going to ask or for the applicant to do this now that there's basically a blank slate, or is the city attorney saying they can basically rebuild per the old details?
The city attorney reviewed the time frames involved and believes it's too late to ask them to come back, given the level of construction that's been approved to date and the legality of a building permit being issued with approvals. We did it twice, essentially.
Okay.
So he says if they hadn't gotten approval of the items, obviously, that we'd have more recourse to come back in and say you're not following what the ABR has approved or the Single Family Design Board has approved. So in this case, he's not compelled to want to pursue it.
That's an answer. Anybody else have a question about that? Okay. Does staff have any other comments? If not, we'll start with item 1, which is 380 El Salito Road.
I would like to read something.
If I can have your name for the record first.
Lynn Kirk.
Frank Kirk.
Okay. You may read something first.
We would like to reiterate that we got a building permit and did everything in good faith and legally. All those who are complaining about our fence cannot see the fence from their homes. Only when they drive down the road can they see the fence. They must be very offended driving in Santa Barbara, since there are hundreds, if not thousands, of 6-foot chain link fences everywhere. We have included photos of fences within 1 block of our house on El Cielito, Las Canoas, and Mount Calvary, which, by the way, I think is just as rural, Mount Calvary. We have also included photos of Cielito Lane with fence violations and even a garage setback violation. I have these here.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Second, we are the largest property owners on the lane. We have a right to the fence, to fence in our property for our protection, security, privacy, and safety, just as everyone else in Santa Barbara. We have suffered trespassing, theft of fencing materials, signs, and other acts of vandalism. As a result, 2 of our beloved lambs were killed by neighborhood dogs due to the fact that they were able to get onto our property when over 200 feet of fencing had been taken down and removed. At the last meeting, one of the board members made a very inflammatory remark, and absolutely false, that has empowered our neighbors and created what feels to us like a lynch mob. They will not work with us. They want us to move the fence up so that we lose over an acre of land. This is land that we have maintained and paid taxes on for 14 years and just happens to be about the size of each individual lot. Otherwise, they threaten to go to court and sue the city and try and have people fired. We have lived in New York City, Los Angeles, Ojai, and for the last 14 years in Santa Barbara. We have been married for 42 years and have never had any problems with any neighbor, nor have we ever been involved in a lawsuit. We are done. I will give you our proposal.
Okay.
We propose to paint it any color they want, but they've already rejected this, so we're in trouble. Okay, we propose to
just
paint
us.
any color, we think that one of those would really hide
Any
it,
flat color
would really hide it.
change.
We propose to cut it down to 4 feet,
Cut it from 6 feet to 4 feet.
and we propose to put in, oh, here's another letter from another neighbor who says he doesn't care. We propose to put in those plants. I went to the botanical gardens and got names of plants. I'm shaking, I'm so nervous. Plants
okay.
that we propose to put in. California white alder, manzanita, lemonberry. They have lemon berries there. I took a look. California sycamore, and populus, nimbus, male.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what that is. And they have, and we are proposing to put in 12 large, 5-gallon this time, shrubs and trees.
We also have some smaller,
Well,
already planted.
yeah, well, they know about the vines.
Okay. Do you want to show us those photographs? Just quickly, we'll go through them.
Okay,
We put them in the center here, and the TV camera will zoom
These
in on
are
it.
photographs of Las Canoas.
Okay.
These are photographs of Schofield Park. This is a photograph on El Cielito. This is on Mount Calvary, which is totally fenced. Here's El Cielito. You can see how long this one is. It's a wide angle
Right across
lens.
from our entrance to our house.
I'll pass these down once we're through looking
This
at
is
them.
El Cielito. This is Las Canoas with the trumpet vines on it, and I poked around. There's no irrigation, and look at how they've grown.
Okay.
This is Cielito Lane. Here is a fence that is right on the road. Here's another fence that is right on the road. You can, let me see, can I take
You may.
I'm sorry. You can see that my fence is tucked in behind there.
Okay.
This is on Cielito Lane. You can see how close that garage is there to the street. And there's my fence, our fence, I'm sorry.
It's all right. Great. Anything else you want?
Yeah, I have other ones too. Hold on.
Go down all day.
Here is on, this is on Mount Calvary. You can see how high that fence is over there. That, you can actually see that fence from El Cielito, how Mount Calvary goes up.
Okay.
So all those pictures are within 1 block.
All righty. I just realized that when we started this meeting, I forgot to read the minutes of the previous meeting. Well, but you went through your presentation, so if you don't mind, we'll take one step backwards, read those minutes, and then we'll have any more comments.
Okay, so the comments from the previous meeting were, number 1, study painting the fence a dark, natural color. Number 2, provide a landscape plan along Cielito Lane on the public side of the fence, including shrubs, native evergreen, and possibly trees. Number 3, provide a solution for the fence where it crosses drainage swales. Number 4, provide a solution where the fence joins the gate and stone columns on the eastern portion of the property. And number 5, it says remove the existing fence at areas where the new fence has been installed.
Okay. Do you want to...
There's only 2 other issues.
Perfect.
The one is about the fence to the gate and the stone columns. Well, if we reduce the fence to 4 feet, there'll be absolutely no problem at all. It would just abut to the stone columns. And in terms of the drainage, well, the drainage is very much lower than the fence, and when staff came out to take a look at it, they saw no problem. My proposal is we'll sign an affidavit. If there's a problem, we'll fix it. If there's no problem, we won't. I
Okay.
mean,
Item 5.
and removing the existing fence, I think we have, but if we haven't, It's because there's a beehive there and everybody's afraid to do it, but we'll do it. It's just some old wood fence.
I remember that from last time.
The beehive,
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else to say? Okay. I will open up public comment. We have one speaker, and this is Graham Lyons. Come right up here. Is that on?
Not yet.
Yes. Hold on to that. If you announce your name just
Sure.
in the microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Graham Lyons. I'm an attorney at Mullen and Hensel. I represent several of the neighbors on Ciolito Lane, which is the lane that the fence faces. First, obviously, I'd like to start with just a little history briefly. I think we're all under the understanding that there was a permit that was previously issued for the fence. It was issued in error, shouldn't have been issued. Obviously, everyone feels unfortunate about that. There's been a lot of time and money spent by a lot of people because of that permit initially being issued. But it's very clear that it was issued in error. So as a matter of law, the city can't rely on it, the applicant can't rely on it, and in fact, the guidelines for the Single-Family Design Board specifically state that when you're reviewing an as-built application, I'll just read here Part 3, 2.6, as-built applications with the will be reviewed with the same degree of scrutiny and consideration afforded other proposed new projects. If an as-built work is not constructed or completed with review of the Single-Family Design Board, it may be denied if the work's deemed unacceptable. So I think just I had a chance to review the hearing last time. There was a lot of discussion about the fact that this fence probably shouldn't have been put in the first place. If everyone had their druthers, it wouldn't be where it is, but it is. So let's try and figure out a way to make it work. I don't think that's really the right way to look at this. I think that the board needs to take a look and say, would we have approved this if it were just on a piece of paper rather than in the ground right now? I think really the neighbors have three specific issues with the fence. One, the disturbance of the oak trees, the use of landscaping to try and hide the fence. Secondly, the interference with the natural drainage, which may affect their properties and the lane itself if there were strong rains of flood, something like that. And then third, the neighborhood compatibility issue. As to the oaks, I think we saw in the pictures before that it basically envelops a lot of oak trees. It wraps around a lot of the limbs, and there are posts that have been put in both within the root system and very near the trunk of many of the oak trees. Again, I'll refer back to the guidelines. Part 2, Section 3D addresses native trees, specifically oak trees. Section 1 says, no earth disturbance is allowed in the circular area 1/3 the distance of the overall canopy/drip line as measured from the trunk. I think that there are several instances which have been shown in the photographs and on the plans where there has been earth disturbance. There are actually posts that have been put in within that area. Again, relying on the guidelines, that is not permitted based on the area where the oak trees are right now. Also, the landscaping, we had a lot of discussion last time about using trumpet vines, other sort of vegetation to hide the fence. I think it had been referred to as looking sort of like a prison in some instances because it was so tall, it was so long. So there was a lot of discussion about, well, let's put up some trumpet vines, let's do things like that to try and hide the fence. Again, I'm just relying on guidelines here. And guidelines, Part 2, Section 2, instructs the board to avoid using landscaping to correct problems of design, privacy, and bulk. The architecture should be of sufficient aesthetic quality to stand alone regardless of potential landscape changes over time. Again, I think trying to hide the fence, clearly trying to fix a problem that's there now, it's inconsistent with the guidelines instruct. We don't know. I think we heard last time that it may take up to 5 years for the trumpet vine to actually cover the fence. 5 years is a long time to try and wait around for 620 feet of chain link fence to get covered. And there's no assurance that that actually is going to happen either. I guess the next issue would be the interference with the natural drainage. I think if you refer to the guidelines, they have the guidelines provide specific instruction on determining if there are improvements that are put near natural watercourses, certain findings that need to be made. I'd refer to the guidelines Part 2, Section 4.2 that includes those specific instructions. I don't think that we've heard anything specifically about how to address those or to make the required findings for that as well. Finally, neighborhood compatibility. I know that we've seen lots of pictures from the applicant and from my clients regarding what really is the character of the neighborhood. I think, quite frankly, it's 620 feet in a front yard of a property. My clients see it every single day. I think that there are at least two of those folks that do see it from their house, not just while they're driving down the lane. It's very close to the road. It's very long. I don't think that it's compatible. I think that if you go and take an actual drive around the neighborhood, there's nothing like this in the neighborhood. And finally, there are specific requirements for findings that need to be made in order for the board to approve this project. This project was referred to the board pursuant to Section 22.69020 of the zoning ordinance because it is a fence in the front yard setback. I'd like to read just briefly through those findings. First, as to consistency and appearance, the proposed development has to be consistent with the scenic character of the city and will enhance the appearance of the neighborhood. Secondly, compatibility. The proposed development is compatible with the neighborhood and its size, bulk, and scale is appropriate to the site of the neighborhood. Third, the quality and architecture and materials. The proposed buildings and structures are designed with quality architectural details. The proposed materials, in this instance the chain link fence, and colors maintain the natural appearance of the ridge line and the hillside. 4, as to trees, the proposed project to the maximum extent feasible preserves and protects healthy, non-invasive trees with a trunk diameter of 4 inches or more. 5, health, safety, and welfare. 6, good neighbor guidelines. The project generally complies with the good neighbor guidelines regarding privacy, landscaping, noise, and lighting. And finally, public views. The development, including proposed structures and grading, preserves significant public scenic views of and from the hillside.
Thank you.
In conclusion, I think that obviously, there's a dispute between the neighbors regarding whether or not this is appropriate or not. My clients have tried very hard to work with the applicant to come up with a solution. I'm simply saying this for the fact that we have proposed a solution that would move the fence back so that it can't be seen from the road, it can't be seen from the other neighbors.
Can you wrap it up, please?
I'm getting there. And my clients have also offered to help pay for the cost of moving it. I think that a lot of the materials can still be reused in a new fence. They'd be willing to share in the cost of doing that. They understand that this is an unfortunate circumstance that we're trying to resolve, but leaving the fence where it is inappropriate. It's inconsistent with the guidelines, and if the board were to approve it, I'd like to see specific findings made for that approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other speakers? Any other speaker slips? We have applicant. You have 2 letters, or was it just 1 letter?
Well, I have a letter that was sent in, and I have another letter that I turned over to you of another
Did I
neighbor.
just
What
lose
difference does it make?
Doesn't make any difference.
I mean,
I-
it feels so...
I'm sorry, but I just want to put it in the record,
Okay.
pass it down to there, and it gets into the
Okay,
file.
here's another letter right there.
There it is. I lost it.
And didn't you get one today, too?
And he'll go over that. Denise Ward in favor. Okay. Dennis?
Dennis.
Oops. Dennis Ward.
He's
Or
on
Wade.
Alciolito.
Elite. Do you know where in
Oh,
proximity?
actually, he's not. He's on Las Canoas, isn't it? Yeah, he's on Las Canoas. So, I'm turned around anyway. So this is Alciolito.
This is your piece of property right here.
So Dennis is across. Can I show you where some of these fences on this map if you wanted to see? Because I could show you. Right across here is a big chain link fence.
Well,
But, it does, I mean, okay, Dennis is right here.
perfect.
Oh, right here. There's Las Canoas. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
And the other letter you got was on Alciolito.
All right.
1 block down.
Pass this.
Don't
And
give
can
me
we
that.
I
have...
just wanted to ask one question.
I will in a moment. I'll get back to you. I'm right now in public comment, and I want to finish with the public comment section.
We're not public.
Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we got a letter last week on the 9th that we forwarded to you via email from, it's a letter in opposition from Nora McMeeking.
Okay.
And we have a letter in opposition from Paula Westbury. And today we got a letter in support from Caroline Santandrea at 272 Alciolito Road.
Okay.
We got that very last minute, so we didn't have time to email it to you in advance, but I can pass it down.
Okay. Just in support. All right, so I'll close public comment. I'll return it back to the board to ask you questions, and then we'll get into our comments deliberation. Any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, we
Aaron.
have an actual landscape plan that
Right? Oh.
What he's actually saying is you got these things here, and so normally say this little number A is going to
Oh.
be 3 of those, number B is going to be 4 of those. And
I was actually going to let you pick out the trees that you wanted me to get and the bushes. And also, I think if we cut it down to 4 feet, it changes the
appearance.
Totally.
the bushes, would probably be more bushes than trees now would be more, but I would do whatever the board said. I mean,
So that's your answer? There's no, the landscape plan is just what we have. Any other questions? Can we have those photographs there that came today go this direction? Yes.
I was wondering if the applicant had any intention of removing the fence from the drip lines of the existing oak trees.
well, we had the arborist from the city go up there and say there was no problem. And he said there'd be no problem for 5 years. He'd want to come out again and check it in 5 years. From the way I see it, there's one branch that's gone through, and you have a picture of it. I can cut the branch. I mean,
Or we can make a bigger hole.
or we can make a bigger hole.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, to clarify about, we were talking about Tim Downey, the city arborist. We showed him all the photographs that we had and the plans, but he didn't go up there.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you
At least
said
not when I was talking to him about it. As far as I know, he didn't go up there.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? And if not, it will go into comments. Does someone have a comment? Mr. Miller, did you visit the site?
No, I did not. I have to admit, I did not. But I'm listening to the feedback, and it's just really unfortunate that the neighbors, got caught doing this. And just from listening to you, what my impression is, it's kind of a shock. They saw something new. You got a fence up. It's brand new. It's shiny. It's silver. You drive down to your home, and all of a sudden you see this huge fence to your right, and it's a shock. And so I think for me, certain things have to take into account. I think I'm in favor of reducing it 4 feet. That may not be what they want. However, it is shown that in time you can cover it and it'll disappear. So it's a matter of being patient to let the shock value of the new fence disappear if you color it a neutral color like green or black. And another thing that kind of bothers me is this issue of wanting to move the fence back. This is private property. Private property have rights. I've heard of people having landscape easements. There are things you can do that are legal where other property owners pay or whatever by a legal agreement to have landscape easements. So to ask a private property owner to modify their fencing without just compensation, I kind of feel uncomfortable about that. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Good comment. Thank you.
No, we don't need no. Anybody else? Denise?
Well, I believe that the neighbors did offer to pay for half of the moving of the fence if it were agreeable to all parties to move it back. So
we're also talking about the loss of use of their property as well.
Right now we need to talk about the proposal that's in front of us. The proposal in front of us is reducing the height to 4 feet, and it's going to coloring it, and then also adding additional landscaping.
Mr. Chair, I'll comment. As far as the color of the fence, I'd be in favor of the top middle color.
Okay.
I believe that's the darkest.
Thank you.
I wrote down the plant material you were talking about using. The poplars, the alders, and the sycamores are typically kind of riparian type trees. So, creek, they grow in creeks. So those might work where you have those drainage courses, but I'm not sure on the dry slope if those would be work well. Probably oaks would be more adapted on the slope like that.
How about manzanilla and
lemonberry? Those would be fine, I think. You might want to look at others.
but I think we want to see an actual plan so we know what we're getting.
Okay.
As far as the height, I think the 4 foot is going to feel a lot better from El Solito. I don't know if it's going to prevent certain animals from hopping over, though.
Oh, I know, I won't be able to bring the sheep down anymore.
Okay. Comments from anybody else?
Well, being that the site has been reviewed by an arborist, I wouldn't think that putting in 2-inch diameter steel posts are going to cause that much damage to the oak tree unless you're, drilling right into it. As for the drainage, I could see maybe that if you have drainage swells coming down and the fence goes into the swell, that could cause some problems, and I think that could be removed. But just the chain link fence itself, I don't see what that would cause an overall problem.
Thank you. I'll interject my comments. I think what you're proposing is fine. We earlier heard today about another project that's being built that's in the Mission Special Design District because it's a proximity to the Mission, and a hiccup happened and the house is being rebuilt, and we have no control over how it's being rebuilt. Mistakes humanistically happen every once in a while. I don't see this as a mistake. I see this as the shock of the shiny fence, and it's a shame it wasn't put up as a black fence from day one. But we're going to correct that. The landscaping is going to help a lot. And actually, it's very admirable to reduce the height because I wouldn't have recommended that to you. But you're choosing to do that, which is above and beyond what I think is what we're asking you to do. So I feel like your proposal is tremendous. The documentation for the landscaping plan is something that can come later. I know our boards want to see these things. It's just a matter before we give it final, but I feel like we can give you preliminary with some strong comments to providing some additional information, and that would be the landscaping. The drainage issues, it's something that can be addressed with a detail or with some more information at the final level, just so we can have a picture or understand. I know what you said. There was yeah.
Can I talk? There is a picture in there of one of the drainages, and you can see how deep down it is, and it's way on the other side of the
That's
fence.
swell. See,
There's only one swell then.
I just want to say I'm not an expert in that area, so I'm not going to tell anybody what to do with it. But in order for us to move the project forward, to say that needs to be intelligently
And we're fine with that.
a solution is all that I'm saying, and that's. So that's where I'm coming from as an individual. Does any other board member want to make a comment?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I agree with pretty much all those comments. The one thing I might add is to have the city arborist do a site visit,
Okay.
right, versus maybe just reviewing photographs that are given to him.
That's valid.
So he can actually see what's actually on the ground there and have his recommendations part of our record and maybe incorporate it into our final.
A question for you is, can the board make preliminary approval based upon a future site visit and that whatever he recommends becomes part of the final solution? Or does the board feel like we should wait until we have the arborist visit the site? My 2 cents is that it can wait. Whatever the arborist comes across will be addressed for the final drawings. Preliminary approval basically says that the fence can be here. We like the way it's being modified. We feel that it can be compatible with the neighborhood.
Mr. Chair, I think if you give direction that the plan is approved with that condition that the arborists review the location around the oaks to protect them, that should be sufficient what your intent would be.
Okay. So, any other comments from the board members?
I am grateful for your lowering the fence. I think that's going to make a big difference. Secondly, instead of trees at that height, really what you need are shrubs. Yeah. So if you can, the more shrubs you can put there to hide the fence, the better,
No
I think, and let it look natural and like the surrounding countryside as much as you can. It's really imperative.
They just happen to have two I was going to say they just happen to have two beautiful white alders at the Botanical Garden that I thought. Okay.
Okay. How about you speak, and then we'll have a motion.
I just want to say that, you know, a 4-foot fence, and when you do paint it a pastel color, it doesn't have to be hidden that much.
Yeah, it's
I mean, it basically blends into the countryside. It's not so bad.
especially right there. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. So do we have a board member taking notes to make a motion?
I think you said it best.
Well, I can float a motion. You guys can double check it, but no one slapped my hand. The board this is for preliminary approval with final on consent. Consent is one person that meets once you have all the drawings finished. The proposal would thank the applicant for reducing the fence to a 4-foot height, and the fence is to be colored or painted the middle brown color on the color chart that has the dot, and that'll become part of the file, and then you figure out what the paint number is and add it to the plans. The applicant shall return with a landscape plan indicating the quantity and the species of the planting that is being proposed and the container size. But the board, based upon what we heard with the manzanita and the lemonberry and some additional oaks, finds that is to be... Didn't you say oaks?
No, she said oaks.
Oh, she said oaks.
Can you plant oaks? I can go buy some oaks somewhere?
But I don't think we need oaks now.
Okay, never mind. Let's drop that. Let's back
I
up.
see what you're saying.
I'm floating a motion for the board to move
I
on.
can get a couple of oaks.
Manzanita and lemonberry.
And oaks. Put in the oaks.
I will let you do that on your own. One of these two people will be on consent. They're going to be reviewing the landscaping portion of it. The applicant is to bring additional information about the drainage swales and how the fence is to cross through the drainage swale.
Okay.
The city arborist is to visit the site and make his recommendations prior to final, and his recommendations shall be incorporated onto the plans.
Okay.
So that is a motion for preliminary approval, making neighborhood findings. Is there someone willing to make a first and second of such a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Oops.
could you make the neighborhood preservation ordinance findings and also the hillside findings?
I was
Some of the
actually,
hillside
whoever raised
findings.
his hand was going to make that finding. So who is going to be the firster? Mr. Miller?
So to read this off, I guess,
Briefly?
appropriate grading and natural topography to protect that. Also the appropriate development scale. Appropriate grading and natural topography protection. The appropriate development scale to develop, including proposed structures, to maintain scale. And I think that 4-foot height is a big step. The development, including proposed structures and grading appropriate on site, I guess. Apply. I'm quite. This I never understood. Consistent with appearance, the proposed development will be consistent with the scenic character of the city and will enhance the appearance of the neighborhood. Compatibility, the proposed development will be compatible with the neighborhood and its bulk scale. The material, though it's controversial, I think considering what we're doing, it's going to make it quality, and the colors will maintain the compatibility of it in the area. The trees will not be removed. There won't be any significant impact on the trees. The health and safety is fine. The good neighbor guidelines, it complies fairly well considering, and the development, including proposed structures and grading, will preserve the existing significant public scenic views of the area hillside.
Okay, is there a second for that motion? Second by Glenn. Is there any other discussion? The applicant, do you want to have any, just add anything? I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that's unanimous. So this has a 10-day appeal period, which I shall announce, and we will move forward.
And then after the appeal period, I come and meet with you people?
Get the arborist to do his report, find out what he needs to do, and then find a landscape person to help add some whatever Italian language they write in, or Greek, Latin, I'm sorry.
Okay, excellent. Tony, are you going to get the arborist to go out? Okay.
You can, yeah. We need to actually, everything that was in front of us that was on the TV camera, all those photographs need to go back into that file.
Oh.
It's just how we keep the record. Moving on to item 2, which is 1131 Los Pueblos Road.
Can you reproduce it for yourself? Sure, but this is the only record we have of it, too.
Okay. Well, when we meet with the landscape...
Give me a second to clean up.
Hey, you know, you can make a color copy.
But that would be the same.
Okay.
This one doesn't have it.
That's a letter that I wrote. Yeah, we're going to do one of those.
We're going to start the next item. Once we get the minutes, we'll read that and we'll move forward. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, these are the comments from the previous meeting. Reduce the overall height and mass of the building. Reduce the proportions of the tower element and integrate to fit the building. Number 3, diminish the expansiveness of the roof lines. 4, solar panels. Study solar panels to better fit the design. Number 5, provide a photo of the front redwood tree proposed for removal. Number 6, update the project description. That's it.
All right. Can I have your name for the record?
My name is Brian Murphy. I'm the architect on the project. And we have...
Can we first start with the project description? Has that been modified to reflect the current square footages?
You know, I emailed that to Tony, and I actually just got back from vacation, and I see that he hasn't changed it in the
So why don't you tell us what numbers we're looking at?
The ones here on the plan that have been submitted. We are looking at an existing house area of 2258 net. And we
Slow down
are...
a second. The existing house before you did anything is 20... Okay, 2258, okay.
Demoing 454.
Okay.
Adding on the first floor 655.
Second floor?
Actually, the basement is the other area.
Oh, okay. So the basement is...
Existing area on the in the basement level is 362. 161 of that is being converted to garage. 110 of that is being converted to storage.
This is getting pretty complicated. Let's move on.
It is a little complicated, yes.
Let's just say it still needs to be needs to be corrected.
It's not simply adding, it's things are getting mixed and shuffled, so yes.
All right, it's not simple.
But we have restudied, the board wasn't really asking that we relook at the site too much, but we certainly have restudied the elevations and reduced greatly the overall height of the building. reduced the height of the roof, gone back to a previous concept that we had originally, or the previous concept that we had originally, of letting the slope from the rear patio run all the way up to, it's a very deep house, so letting that rear patio slope run all the way up to the ridge, and thereby let the roof be much shorter, attain less height, with a fairly steep slope to the front for our solar panels to mount on and be efficient. So a 7.5 and 12 slope to the front here where our solar panels mount, and then a 3.5 and 12 slope running from that rear patio cover all the way up to the ridge to keep our roof height way down. This dashed line is the existing roof, so we're only a few feet above what is currently the existing roof height in this new proposal. Drastically down from what was the previous proposal. The previous proposal, we were trying to maximize solar area. We've greatly reduced the solar area, and as the board had suggested, we are looking to incorporate some ground-mounted solar arrays on a rack system rather than try and put it all on the roof. It did rather overpower the building, so we are cutting down the height of the building, introducing again, as we had previously, some hipping elements from the sides of the building, so that the roof slope, instead of running end to end, the ridge running continuous, the roof is broken into smaller pieces, very similar to what we had originally proposed. Reducing the solar panels, making them fit kind of in a logical spot there. Restudying the tower, making the tower tie into one of the walls rather than cantilevering out, reducing the scale of it, reducing the height of it, making it much more diminutive.
Do you have the overall height of, what would this element be?
27 feet.
27 feet. Great.
From that overall downhill slope.
Anything else you want to talk about? The photos of the redwood tree?
We do have some photos of the redwood tree. The tree in front is this one here. It's a tree kind of sitting all by itself in that driveway area. Not a very exquisite tree. It seems to have sort of broken at the top at some point. Not a terribly mature tree, about 16-inch diameter. We are proposing to keep the two redwood trees in the rear that are more like 24-inch diameters, 24, that are part of the overall native surrounding, although they're not native trees, but they're kind of grown into that sort of wildlife area, and they seem to fit in much better. This one's kind of a sore thumb sticking out there, and while it's not terribly tall at this point, it will get enormous, and it would create a very large solar shadow if we left it on the south side of our building there. So we really would like to remove that. We're certainly happy to put in some smaller trees, but a redwood tree on the south side of a building is not only for photovoltaic system a death knell, but in terms of passive solar is not a great idea either.
Can you quickly go over your landscape plan and show me what new trees you are proposing?
We don't have a landscape plan at this point yet, but we are certainly happy to incorporate some of those.
Okay. Were you planning on providing a landscape plan?
If the board would like.
Great. Is that all for your presentation?
Yes.
Then I will open up public comment. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this project? Seeing nobody, I'll ask staff. Do we have any letters?
Yes, we got a letter in opposition from Paula Westbury.
Okay. Return it back to the board for questions of the applicant.
The narrow chimney going up, is that, it's not really required to be that height, is it?
2 foot above the ridge within 10 feet.
This is the ridge, right?
Right. So we're within 10 feet.
So you're 10 feet away, right? at that point?
We're just on the edge of that, so
It just seems kind of narrow and high going up there. It kind of fights with the tower, I think.
we could push it away to the 10 foot and then reduce the height of that if you felt that was appropriate.
That's what his eye sees, but you're the designer. Okay. I had a question because we basically go back and forth, said that you were going to take out the redwood tree, we were okay with it, and then today you volunteered to replant something. Did you have any idea kind of what you would want to replant with? Since there's no landscape plan, or you haven't really put much thought into that?
I'd have to talk with the owners and see what they would like to.
Is this a high fire
It is.
project? Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? If there are no more questions, let's go to comments. Mr. Miller.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The little buttress on the tower, to me, strikes me as kind of odd. I think that kind of little swoopy thing was really popular in early California to denote a storefront or a front of a particular building. But used here, I think you're implying it's a buttress to a tower. And I think the simpler you make the tower, the better lucky you'll be. Not try to introduce that element, just make it a straight tower where the line just goes straight down. Because you also did it here on the chimney, and I think if that was just a gentle swoop, curving rather than that little angular, because to me that tells me that it's a storefront or a building front.
Okay. Glenn.
I want to compliment the architect on redesigning the roof and bringing the overall height down dramatically. So I think moving in a very positive direction. My eye went to the exact same place that you saw as well with the tower, and not again quite sure what that tower's doing. The simpler the better, or to be removed would be even better as far as I'm concerned. But if it was just simpler still, I think it would be a benefit to the project. But overall, I think it's a good project.
Thank you. Comments from other people? I had one that I'll add in. I remember here this is kind of a hallway storage area, and what I see here is a tall blank wall. I understand it's pushed back very, very far. The roof here is this roof, so 3D massing wise I can understand how it's not going to look bad because it's so far back. But where I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to try to put some landscaping here to add some softness or just a little bit more. So right now you have 3 equal garage doors. This will never be a garage because there's some storage room or something behind here. So I'm wondering if this door can be reduced in size to allow for a planting area here. It's high fire, so it has to be a certain type of planting, but somehow I think that might help a little bit. But it's a very minor comment. Architecturally wise, I agree with what Jim was saying, Mr. Zimmerman, about the chimney, and that's an easy fix. And this one I can go either way. I mean, it's just design flair, so. But I appreciate the work that you put into it and refining it, so it's a good project.
Mr. Chair?
Aaron.
Question, how tall is the entry archway to the front door?
I don't have my scale on me, but we're 6'8" here, so I'm gonna guess we're 9 foot, 9.5 to the spring line at 6'8", or actually at 6 foot rather, and
maybe it's just me, but I feel like that could come down and just be a little more pedestrian scale wise.
well, I felt it was important that spring lines match of the different arches. The half round arch needs to have the same spring height as the flat arches.
But just to follow in, this isn't a true arch, half circle. It's a segmented arch, so this could come down in height a little bit. I mean, it's just what his eyes saw. Thank you, Aaron. Jim, do you want to jump in? Something?
Well, I agree with the tower, maybe curving it and stepping it, and not having to, bubble it so much.
A simplified.
I think they looked at just simplifying it, make it a little thicker. And it would be nice, I think. The chimney just seems to be sticking up way above the roof line. If that could just drop down a slight bit. But it's a good design.
Do you have any comment or any 2 cents, or you want to just not even
Well,
bother?
a flatter arch, I think would look better there.
Okay.
It does look a little out of scale.
Okay. So, are there any other discussion? If not, we'll float a motion, and the motion would be for preliminary approval and then the decision. Oops.
I think they're a staff hearing officer.
He's already gone to it.
So that's already...
It was for this front stair thing. The question is, do we want it to go to final on consent or return to full board with larger scale drawings and some details and things of that nature?
Well, I'd like to see some heights. I would like to see some heights called out. Because there's really no heights.
Before we even give it preliminary approval?
Well, I'd give it preliminary, sure.
Would you like to float a motion? Or would... I'll point out a couple of things. Be preliminary approval with returning to full board or going straight to consent. I guess you're saying full board because of the heights and things.
It's just really hard to tell on with no dimension on heights.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned one is 27 feet, 28 feet. So I'd like to give a preliminary approval.
I'm going to help you make a motion. But if you go through 1, 2, 3, and 4 and just sort of say what your comments are, and maybe someone will second it.
Well, return to the board.
Return to full board for in-progress review.
And
you would like him
show
to...
heights of the different plate heights and to the top ridge lines. Maybe simplify the tower, the batter sloping down.
Mm-hmm. This is the front entry.
And possibly just lower the arch a slight bit. Not lower it, but go to more of a flat arch. Not as flat as these, but I think something maybe in between I think would look good.
So study the scale of the front entry arch.
Right.
And then do you want to make a comment about that?
Well, the chimney I think could be brought down. It looks like you have 10 feet to the face. And without relocating it inside and getting 10 feet and bringing it down maybe 1.5 feet or so.
So study reducing the height of the chimney.
And then also a landscape plan.
All right. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Miller seconded. Okay. Any other discussion? Did we cover all the items?
I have one question.
You may.
Are you going to have gutters?
Yes.
So maybe, are you going to have downspouts?
Yes.
So maybe that should be included in the elevations too.
So then you ask the person who made the motion, which is Jim, can we add to the motion?
Mr. Zimmerman, can you add to the motion that downspouts and gutters be included in the exterior elevations?
Yes, that
Okay.
should be included.
Any other discussions?
Could I make comment? If you're going with gutters and you have a rolled edge on the eaves, how are you going to work that?
A half-round gutter that...
So the half-round gutter then will sit within the curve there.
Okay.
And some leaders would be nice. Yeah, I think that would help a lot.
Mr. Chair, may we discuss colors, or at least have a concept of what the colors are going to be on the project?
Do you want to discuss colors, and then we'll add to the motion that a color board be provided? You probably told us before, and we forgot.
We've seen color elevations, but I don't know how accurate they were. But
They were just kind of an indication of what we were thinking about, but we weren't fixed on any colors at this point.
You want to say you don't know yet, and you're going to bring us back a color board?
I will bring you back.
it's coming back to the full board.
And it's coming back to full board.
me.
It's coming back to full board. And one last thing. Oops.
It's a very nice drawing.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's nice.
Since you got to be the honored person making the motion, you get to make the neighborhood findings once I find that page. Which is these bullet points, those three.
Well, consistency in appearance, compatibility.
With the neighborhood. Okay.
And the quality architecture materials, I think is acceptable. Trees, I think we're losing one redwood tree, but due to the shadow on the, I think that could probably be acceptable.
And that's it. Okay. Great. Any other discussion on the motion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I have to abstain.
And one abstention. Okay.
you
I'll
very
announce
much.
a 10-day appeal period, and then put yourself back on when you're ready to have an in-progress review.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And if you can review the minutes, the draft minutes, to make sure everything was clear. Thank you. We're on to item 3, which is 921 Arbolado Road. This is an in-progress review, so we'll start by reading the minutes of the previous meeting. Do you have drawing? Oh, they have the drawings.
So, Mr. Chair, the comments from the previous meeting are: the size, bulk, scale, and architecture are appropriate to the neighborhood. Number 2, provide a color and material board. Number 3, return with a landscape plan.
Actually, Lane's going to do most of this. So who's good for
Just one sheet? That would be on the sheet?
Sorry about that, Lane.
If you guys introduce yourselves for the record.
Lane Goodkind, landscape architect.
Robert Foley, representing Don Nolte Architects.
And I'm Dave Fristow, owner.
Okay.
So here we have a landscape plan. And the main thing to point out is that it's primarily native species, with a few exceptions. But our primary goal is to make all the edges disappear, essentially. And even up at the street, since being a very steep hillside up on the Arbolado Road right here, we have some existing oaks that we're going to maintain. So basically, from the street, the property is already inherently sheltered or screened, but we'll be supplementing that with a few native shrubs. The dark green are new oaks, and the light green are existing. So there's a couple really big ones on this west property boundary. So there's already substantial screening from neighbors on all sides, essentially. There's a little bit of an open spot right here to this neighbor that we'd like to completely fill in with oaks and tall shrubs. But again, all these, it's just a natural hedge all the way around that we're going to maintain and totally blur the edge. The one feature on the hillside facing the city, these light green trees are olives, so there's a grove of olive trees and lavender. The light green is all a sort of a meadow effect of native grasses. So they'll all be low, growing no more than 24 inches, 30 inches tall. Around that Around the house, adjacent to the house, the structure is all succulents. So tall succulents, euphorbias, aloes, agaves. And that's it. It's really very simple. There's not a lot of hardscape. This color is basically all decomposed granite. There's a lot of existing boulders. There's kind of a dry wash that goes through the property, which we'll be cleaning up and enhancing so that it retains more runoff and doesn't pose any drainage problems in the future. Currently, all of the existing runoff from the existing house goes into that at this point, and there is a little bit of erosion that we're going to correct. So we'll be replanting that and rebuilding that with native boulders. We're going to uncover a lot of boulders, so we'll be able to use those to make a couple small seating areas.
Okay.
And
great. You have a color board?
We do. I can go over that. Just step in here. The roof, we're going to use a clay tile. It's a two-piece mission tile made by Redlands Tile with a sand cast finish to it. It's the, I can't read upside down, terracotta blend. It's not a blend in sense different. We're not taking different colors and put it together. It's a blend within the same clay. The body of the house will be this color here. It'll be an integral into the plaster, and it's sort of a bone, deep bone color.
You don't have the color listed.
Well, it's not a color we can list. You
make it yourself?
We make it ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's about as close as depiction as I can get to it. I can bring in a sample board of it, a plaster sample, if you want to see it. We do have some sandstone on the building. This would be the color of the wood doors and windows. We also have some iron doors and windows. We'll get an antique black finish, and also the railings will be an antique black finish. And underneath the eaves, we'll have a medium wood stain to it, more on the natural side.
Thank you. Anything else for your presentation? If not, I'll open up public comment. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this project? Seeing nobody, I'll ask staff if there's some letters.
We do have one letter in opposition from Paula Westbury.
Okay. So we return it back to the board, close public comment, return it back to the board for questions of the applicant. I guess I'll have one question right off the bat. What were the heights of this retaining wall? Refresh my memory. And then what's the planting that's happening in front of those, if they're like taller than 4 feet at retaining?
Both of those retaining walls are only 3 feet tall, right?
Yeah, it's 7 foot total, so it's 3.5 and 3.
And there's planting in between?
There is planting in between.
Okay.
And it's on the downhill side, so you can't see them from the street. You can only see them when you're in the house looking back towards the hill.
Okay. And then that wall itself will be plaster finish, or is it a stone finish? Or what's the cap material?
Well,
and you need to be on a mic if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry.
The existing wall there is stone. It's a sandstone wall. There's a picture of it in there.
I just forget.
Yeah, just
Stone with a stone cap.
Yeah.
I just forget. I don't remember these things.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
Mr. Chair, yes. Kind of a technical little question. On the agenda, it says for landscaping, color, and materials. We're not reviewing final architecture today?
Not today, no.
Okay, so that's good. Second item on the landscape plan, some of the trees that are delineated are actually on the neighbor's property. Mm-hmm. Is this proposals that you're putting on the neighbor's property?
As I understand, the owner has an agreement.
Well, I don't know that we're putting for this tree probably. She doesn't have a problem, but I didn't. I mean, I guess I didn't catch this. We'll probably put it on our side of the line.
And
in other words, there is a tree here that's a little bit bigger than it looks. I think right here, right on the line.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll probably put this on our side.
And then some of these other smaller, are they?
We'll move them all over. It's almost like a large open space that isn't anybody's garden. So essentially,
We'll make sure we're
we'll
not
make
on
sure
her
it's
property
all.
unless she asks me to do so.
Yeah.
Clearly, yeah, I'm sorry, we just weren't paying. Yeah.
Okay, and then the third question is, have you worked with any of the, do you have a Tier 3 requirement for the water management?
Yes, we
Have
do.
you looked
we
at
have
that
a,
yet?
We have a, Harry Fowler from Penfield and Smith is going to be doing the grading and drainage, and he was waiting for the final landscape plan to start. So the next, when we come back, we'll have that civil engineer drawings for that.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question. What is the material here? It's all white. Is that?
Well, we're still trying to determine what the permeability is going to be. Are you guys still considering a gravel, or what? We're still considering a.
We're thinking about a
crushed
gravel.
Okay.
That was probably our latest guess, but that's what we're thinking.
Is it determined by the soils engineer? Is that?
We don't have our soils report final.
Got it.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'll jump in with another question. The color of the fence here, the 6-foot perimeter fence, and then how is there going to be a gate, or how's that resolution at the drive?
No gate. It terminates on either side of the house. With, So
okay.
these will be wrought iron, decorative wrought iron to match some of the wrought iron work on the house. The rest of it will just be a post, a wood post and wire mesh, very tight, kind of agrarian wire mesh so that it disappears. The goal is just so that it just completely disappears.
Okay.
The wood posts are anchored, I think, with 2x2 iron rods, so they're not good. The wood isn't going deep into the ground, and then they just have wood faces on
It's
it.
a galvanized post with just encased in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, where are you using the Italian cypress? It's on the legend.
Yeah, I don't think we will use them.
Okay. And then the other question was, has the fire department reviewed this plan?
No.
Okay.
So this review is for preliminary approval, and then the board needs to decide if it's going to final on consent or final back to full board. Any other questions or comments? And that the architecture right now is only has preliminary.
Yes, preliminary. We're going to come back with the working drawings for final.
Yeah, that's my question, was whether the house was coming back to full board or whether the house is coming back to full board. Okay, for in progress.
That's what you said last time.
Okay, just wanted to be clear about that.
I have one more question.
Do we have any talk about the irrigation, how the drip system, or is that even?
It won't be drip. It'll be low precipitation rotator spray where we need it.
So this project is here for review of the landscaping and materials. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion for preliminary approval.
Just, I guess, remove the Italian cypress from the legend and return on final on consent.
For the landscaping, final on consent is fine. Okay. Is there a second for that motion? Second by Denise. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I think we just need to add that this plan needs to be approved by the fire department. And two, because of the Tier 3 hasn't been worked out, that may influence some of your landscaping plan, but that's fine. It could be adapted for final.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, what about the unknown? We think it's
The
gravel,
driveway
but we're
material?
not sure.
How about, of course, for final, he has to be more specific on what the driveway material is going to be.
I'm thinking pavers or gravel, but wanted to get the soils report, but we will be more specific.
Okay. So we have a motion on the board for preliminary approval of the landscape, returning back to consent. Any other discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Does this
And-
get submitted or stamped, or what do we do with those?
Why don't you just keep it and bring it when you bring the architecture?
Okay.
This is just really for landscaping. But you're in... Yeah. And this is an extra one. You can keep that.
I get it there.
Moving on to item 4, which is 526 Sea Ranch Drive.
Hey, Josh. Good.
You like to put someone else in the hot seat every time, don't you?
I've had some bad experiences in that thing.
I haven't had any bad experiences here yet, so.
Well, we're going to start by having you announce your names. We'll read the minutes of the previous meeting, and then we'll go forward.
Yeah, Josh Monroy with Earth Form Design Landscape Architects.
Okay.
Robert Foley, representing Don Nolte Architects.
Dan Claus, owner.
Okay. And the minutes in the previous meeting?
Mr. Chair, the comments from the previous meeting where the architecture, mass, scale, and details are appropriate. The second story is minimal in size. Number 2, provide information about the roof material and colors. Number 3, provide details for the deck/balcony. Number 4, the proposed orchard, landscaping, and bioswale are in keeping with the area's rural nature. Number 5, provide a complete landscape plan, including the motor court.
So if I ask you a quick question, are we talking about anything of architecture?
There is a few things, and we submitted plans, but
All right.
I don't see them.
Let's just wait a minute, and we'll have staff pull them out for us.
There was a few things you asked for last time that 2 weeks ago that I brought.
When you have a moment, Tony, we need the architecture drawings for this job. And you only have 2 sets of plans?
2 sets.
Okay. And we have a speaker. Sorry about that, I jumped the gun. So I guess landscaping is going to be first, since you're sitting in that chair.
Why not?
Let's go over the landscape plan.
Okay. So again, this is just showing our existing orchard and our bioswale that we proposed to abate some drainage issues from the previous meeting, so nothing has changed there. The next sheet is the preliminary landscape plan. Here's our existing orchard. At our entry, just a gravel drive lined with palm trees. It's going to be kind of a subtropical palette.
Excuse me, Josh. The driveway is currently asphalt and will remain asphalt until we get up to the house.
That's correct. And then moving on up the driveway, we've got kind of an orchard proposed here, some more subtropical type of fruit trees in keeping with kind of the rural ag feel, more palms coming up the drive with proposed guest parking or pull out. This could be mulch or gravel to match the gravel that we're proposing at the top of the drive here. There's an existing stone pine here and an existing eucalyptus that will remain, that will protect. And previously there was some talk about an existing wall here and that we would be cutting into the hillside. It had been drawn up as a larger wall, like a 7-foot wall, but we've since terraced and done some grading there, some garden walls, so that we can get the wall height down to 3.5 foot walls there. So the existing wall will take off the return and continue with that. So yeah, gravel motor court or chip seal motor court. All subtropical, kind of Mediterranean plant material. And that's the landscape plan.
Great. Let's talk about the architecture. Now that he warmed up the seat for you.
Okay. The last hearing, there was a few things that was asked. Obviously, the landscaping. Second thing was we were asked to put the plate heights of all the different heights. The majority of the house is 8 feet, and the second floor has an 8-foot plate height as well, which let's go.
Right here, whoops.
Yeah.
8, floor, and 8 for the second.
Yeah. So, and we also were asked to provide a detail for this balcony. Basically, there'll be some 6x8s that cantilever out to catch it, and some 3x decking. This is a wood post with a ball, and just alternating pickets. They'll be all painted white to match the house. The roof pitch is all 4 and 12. The exterior of the building will be the windows, frames, the any trim, the corner boards, the eaves, the fascias will all be a white. The body of the house is going to be a vertical board. They'll have a stain, so you'll get some of the character of the wood, and it will age. And we're going for sort of a custom driftwood color. They'll have some grays and browns and different tones to it. The roof is a galvanized corrugated metal that will have an acid wash, which will tone it down. It won't be shiny. It will give it some modeling where it's not all exactly the same. It will have some character to it, instant age, so to speak. And I believe that's it.
Okay. With that, I'll close your presentation, open up public comment. I have one speaker, and that's Pam Lang. And if you come right up here, there's a seat that you can have, and we'll hear what your thoughts are, and you have 3 pictures. Just say your name for the record.
To get my eyes on Pam Lang. Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank the committee for granting a 2-week continuance so we could be here to review the situation and be present at this meeting. While we have no opposition to expanding the present structure at 526 Sea Ranch to 4,129 square feet, we oppose the part of the plan that adds a second story with the balcony. Lower Sea Ranch Drive neighborhood lies in Area 1 of the Hillside Design District, and we understand plans must comply with compatibility, 2-story, and good neighbor guidelines. There have been no second stories in this neighborhood since we moved to Sea Ranch in 1978. From the bottom of the hill to the circle on Sea Ranch Drive, which includes 11 homes. It should be noted when in the plans there is a home that shows a 2-story building. That home is not part of Lower Sea Ranch. It is above the circle. Yes, correct. Okay. If second stories are added to the homes below the applicants, the entire visual simulation of the homes into the habitat of the neighborhood, not to mention the major effect on views and privacy, would change, which of course can adversely affect property values. I have 2 pictures of the neighborhood. The first shows the neighborhood from the circle down Sea Ranch, and the second is the applicant's home presently without the second story. This is the neighborhood, and this is the present home. Okay, we live across the street and down one lot directly in the line of sight of 526, considering the angle of the building. A second story and the second story balcony as proposed will have a direct unobstructed view into our pool and deck area. And I have a picture of that. This is our backyard and our pool. Okay. And how it will affect our privacy. No effort was made to discuss this project before formal notice was given. Although the plan meets FAR regulations, we believe it is incompatible with the neighborhood. The applicant's lot has wonderful views without adding a second story. We do not object to improvement of the applicant's lot, but the design should not add a second story with the balcony, which will impact our privacy as well as change the Lower Sea Ranch neighborhood. Parenthetically, we had a similar addition to our house approximately 11 years ago and chose not to build up but to build out on our lot so as not to affect the neighbors. The applicant, who is an excellent contractor, didn't take into consideration the sensitivity of the neighbors and did not follow the Good Neighbors guidelines outlined in the current City of Santa Barbara single-family design guidelines as far as the needs discussed with neighbors before completing the design. Page 1 and 67N. I have the highest regards for the entire Claus family socially and professionally, and I'm confident in the quality and the beauty of their final edition.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers? Staff, do you have any additional letters?
I got another email this morning, or I got it over the weekend, but I passed it along to you this morning from Barbara and Art Langlois. So, let's see. They live at 506 Sea Ranch, and they're opposed to the second story part of the project. And they say they have CC&Rs that don't allow second stories in that neighborhood, and that second stories could lead to other projects doing second stories and, spoil the views that everyone has in that lower part of Sea Ranch.
Okay. Is that all for public comment?
We do also have a letter in opposition from Paula Westbury.
Thank you. So I will close public comment and open it for questions of the applicant. And the first question I'll ask, are there CC&Rs on this property that you're aware of?
Speak in this? The CC&Rs that are recorded with the deed to my property allow for a second-story addition. And it's a CC&R that initially was recorded in 1945, subsequently amended, but there is no restriction to my knowledge with the CC&R that's recorded with the deed to my property.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Retaining wall that turns 90 degrees by the covered terrace. It's called out as a 4-foot wall, but finished floor is at 281, and the contour at the bottom of that is 271, which tells me that's a 10-foot wall.
Well, the wall doesn't come up as high as the covered porch floor. It's a step.
You guys need to be near a microphone, I'm sorry.
The wall, I'm not sure if you changed this or not, Josh, but this wall is intended to be 4 feet or so below the terrace. So that's no, it's a step. It's a drop off there.
Can we look at it?
The terrace has its own retaining wall.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
What's the finished floor? What's the finished floor of the second floor?
It's 8 feet. It's the plate height of the first floor. We're gonna, frame it. Usually takes about 16 inches.
So,
and then another 8-foot plate height on the second floor.
Approximately 290, maybe 290.25.
What's our first floor?
Its first floor is 281.
Yeah,
and
we're
then
about 9 feet up, excuse me.
9 feet up,
Right.
which makes it 290 even plus pocket change.
Yeah.
Bernie.
Yes, thank you. I'm concerned about the roof, among other things, about the metal roof, which is going to be viewed from people all over above, and it seems to me that metal might have reflection, or so I wondered if you could talk about that.
Well, the metal roof we're proposing is if you did leave it as a galvanized roof, it would be reflective. But we're going to put an acid wash on it, which will dull in the roof, and it will, instead of reflect the sun, it will soak the sun up. And it will have different variations of gray to it. So it won't be a solid, bright roof staring you back. It will be kind of dull and driftwoody colors.
We can ask him to bring a sample to us, and if we're concerned, we'll have him change it.
Excuse me, the same roof that I'm hoping to do here is done on a building in Summerlin, on the main drag in Summerlin. I forget the name of that building, but recently built.
Yeah, it's...
But I can bring a sample.
We could bring a sample in.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, another question for the landscape architect. I was just wondering if you could walk us quickly through the trees. Your legend's a little hard to read.
But can you do it right here from the hot seat?
Yeah.
So the TV camera guy can follow your finger?
Let's see. Bootia palm, king palm, 2 existing Canary Island date palms. These will be fruit trees again here in this area. King palms again up the driveway. king palm, boodia palm, more kings. These are fishtail palms here. The owner has lots of specimen cycads on the site boxed up that we'll be adding in this area here. Again, existing eucalyptus, existing stone pines, carissa tree, boodia palm, also more carissas. So all subtropical palms and canopy trees. Mm-hmm.
Along the Sea Ranch, I think you skipped those. What are those?
Those will be evergreen canopy trees. I don't know that we've called those out yet. But yeah, that symbol denotes a evergreen tree.
Excuse me. This is another, actually, there's an existing Canary Island palm right here where this tree is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not proposing to move that or change it.
We'll be sure to add that to the drawing.
Yeah.
Okay. If there are no other questions, how about some comments? Oops. I'm sorry. Are there more questions?
Because there seems to be a discrepancy in the, I know our board, we can't get into CC&Rs of neighborhoods, but if we go forward with something or approve something or other here today, then would that still be subject to verification of that?
Yeah, it's a good idea to explain this for the benefit of the neighbors, too. The city doesn't get involved in CC&Rs at all. That's a private matter that can be taken up legally between neighbors if they want to do that. We don't get into that at all. We don't enforce them. If the owner says there's no restriction for a second story, we'll just, and he's bringing this proposal to you for your approval, we'll just accept that.
So there's no restriction on this property from the city's perspective, one story only?
Right. The zoning ordinance has no restriction on a second story here. The zoning ordinance just has the normal 30-foot height limit.
Okay.
But you said, too, regarding CC&Rs on
Your particular property, that does, what they mentioned doesn't apply to you, is that correct?
I'm not sure what CC&Rs they're referring to because what I have recorded on my property allows for two-story.
How is it worded? Does it say 2 stories are allowed?
Yes.
So there's no height restriction?
This is a very old CC&R. There, I don't believe there's any reference to a height restriction on it. I may have it in my car.
We don't. That's not what we deal with.
Okay.
Architecturally, I guess I'll have one question just to hornet's nest. You ended up staying with 8 feet on the first floor versus going with 9 or 10. What was the particular reason for that?
Well, we do, the area that we added over here, we popped up to 10. The area here, a lot of this, we wanted to use some of the existing roofs. So in order to do that, we needed to keep the same plate height. And, you know, if we ripped off the roof, there's almost nothing left. You know, we're almost starting over. So we're keeping this roof, the roof over the garage. The only part that's coming out is the part that's right over where the second story is.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Cost consideration as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Questions to the board?
you may.
Well, if this becomes the first, second story element in your neighborhood or whatever, do story poles seem appropriate or not?
It's a question for the board. Does anyone want to chime in if they have a concern? And in particular to the people who have visited the site and have seen it, do they think story poles would be beneficial? My 2 cents is no, because it is so far down from the main drag, and that this neighbor is so much higher that height is not an issue, and I would have even advocated a taller first floor ceiling just for beams and things, but you're keeping it down for cost considerations at 8 foot. I don't see height as an issue just because of the topography that it's located in, and so far the distance from the actual Sea Ranch.
Okay.
That's from my familiarity.
I was curious, have you reviewed it with the fire department?
We have not yet.
Okay. It might You know, a turnaround might be required, or a hammerhead, which would, I think, affect the landscaping substantially. I think you have enough land area, to provide it, but that probably should be looked into.
It's possible too that this guest parking area could be used as a fire pullout as well.
Yeah.
If we get the dimensions right.
Yeah.
Every 500 feet, I think the fire department requires something like that.
Yeah.
And then we could get a 150-foot hose to that side of the structure, I would imagine. So we might not need the hammerhead.
Any other comments or questions? And if not, let's go straight to discussion. Comments.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple comments.
Go for it.
In general, I think the project's really good, but what I see is the landscape is actually further developed than the architecture right now. There's elements on that landscape plan that aren't even showing up on the architecture, the terraces and swimming pools and the configuration of the courtyard in the back hasn't been brought up to the same level. So one of the questions that Aaron asked, which got my attention, was some of the heights of those walls. I think what would be very beneficial is if a couple sections were drawn through those areas, if we're going to do those terraces, and how those walls work with the top of wall, bottom of wall, heights of those, and what are those walls.
Okay.
Some of them are existing, some of them are new.
Mr. Chair, I agree with that, Glenn. There might be some guardrails needed at some points and things like that aren't shown in the plans yet. And one of the things I'm struggling with the landscape plan is the palms lining the driveway. It seems like from the street you want to look up at that driveway and just see orchard and keep it really simple. The palms around the house seem to work better for me, but I'll let other board members comment on that.
Just to respond to your comment, we are working from some existing palm trees that are already there, the Phoenix canariensis palms that are there.
Yeah,
so
I
we're
see
kind of
those. And
going off of that palette, and then again, that's what the owners, what the style that they wanted to have along the drive.
Aaron, if I follow up with your comment, where the pen is the existing Canary Island pine that he's talking about. And the height of it is maybe 8 feet tall or something. And the other ones that he's planning to propose, what would you, where are you seeing your conflict that you've got these big, huge 10 or 20 foot tall
Initially,
palms?
they're probably not going to be huge palms. Otherwise, they'd be pretty expensive to buy. I'm just thinking down the road, the Kentia palms can get really tall, and the brahia, are they bootias or brahias?
They're Budia palms. There's actually both on the plan. But along the drive is mostly Budia and king palm, the Archon.
Denise, do you want to comment on his perspective?
Yes, as I'm looking at some of the pictures here, the driveway, correct? Or is it?
That's actually going back towards the street, but that is that palm
Back towards the
existing.
street. Okay. Yeah, it looks like there's already a number of palms along the way, and it seems to me that these out on the street are palms as well, although they weren't marked as such. They look like queen palms, yeah. So I'm okay with the palm theme continuing. It is. I understand what Aaron's saying. It's a little bit of a conflict with orchard,
I understand.
Apples and oranges, but there they are, and so I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
It's California.
Yeah, it's California, right?
All right. So the project's in front of the board for preliminary approval or additional comments to return back to board, and then also to decide whether or not it's if in progress or back to consent. You may.
Is anyone else concerned with the setting of the second story here in this neighborhood. I think it has to be addressed, and no one's talking about it. It's sort of the pink elephant in the room.
That's kind of why I asked about the story poles. I mean,
and it's a small second-story element. It's not. It doesn't encompass the entire home, but it is quite different. Most of the homes in that neighborhood are rambling ranch style, and clearly there's enough room there to put the master suite somewhere along the plane of the main house. I just I'm a little conflicted about that.
Okay.
I just had a thought talking to you. I feel that the way you handle the second story is really, really beautiful. I mean, it's a very small, low impact on the second story. It's a low impact on the second story. So it may come down to, if future projects in this neighborhood come before the board, it's going to have to be case-by-case basis. I don't know. Because legally he can put a second floor on.
Anybody else have comments?
Thank you. Because I'm struggling with that too, and we on the one hand really can't say that he can't do a second story, so I'm trying to look in our book of guidelines to see what we actually can do, and all I'm finding is under the good neighbor guidelines, one of them has to do with upper story decks and balconies to avoid the number of decks that overlook neighboring properties and how they're supposed to be located so that neighbors don't lose privacy. So that was one finding. And then they're supposed to be screened. There's quite a number of these items on page 62. But while it's kind of a struggle because we do want to preserve the neighborhood, but we also want to adhere to the guidelines. Mm-hmm. And let the owner add on to his property.
We saw some photos of some two stories last time, or in the neighborhood.
There is one two-story, and I believe it's located at this parcel. This used to be one neighborhood, and this was a hammerhead kind of thing, and then it was built. A second neighborhood was built further up, and that was the two-story element that was photographed. But according to the public speaker, everything from this point down is all one story currently.
I think that, in looking at it overall, it is a beautifully designed building, and it is a really modest second story. So in that sense, I can support it. I'm just having a little trouble, but
well, let's if anyone wants to do any more comments, I'll do a straw poll since everyone's kind of like waffling around.
May I ask a question?
Actually, not. Let's just focus on us. Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I look at this. There was another neighborhood that was near us, or that we reviewed, that was near Hope Avenue, in which all of them were one-story houses. It was like one street down from La Colina, where Hope School was, I think. And it was a very huge, aggressive, two-story thing, and built right on top of the garage like they do in Goleta. And we said, absolutely not. On a small lot. And my perspective was, I'm not going to tell the owner he can't do a two-story because he's the first one on the street, but you got to do it really well. And this wasn't well, and I think we were unanimously and told the person, try again, and they ended up abandoning the project. So, but from me, in that perspective, the second story that was being imposed on that neighborhood was not being done very sensitively. And that was more of a consideration because the lots were, between 7,000 and 8,000 square feet. There was a smaller neighborhood. This, people are on 1 acre tracts. It's the two-storyness isn't as much of an issue from my perspective, reviewing how this is going to impact the public.
Chair, I recall our public speaker here did say, though, that this balcony will look right down onto her pool area. So is there anything that can be done with screening, trees, etc., something to give her the privacy that I know I would want if someone was, I wouldn't want anybody looking down on me in my pool at midnight.
Are you asking me?
No, this is a discussion between us. And I heard that comment as well, and what I thought about was the project that came through with Jeff Shelton on Arbolata, I think it was, where there was a neighbor across the street and her pool, and now it was a two-story house, and how there was a concern and how far the distance was and the privacy issues. And if we're dealing with a neighbor over here, we can see with the proximity of distance. When I'm looking at, I don't know if this is 300 or 400 feet, but it's significant, and along Arbolata, that was a lot narrower of a neighborhood.
Yeah, it definitely was.
And that was in consideration where we did have them affect their outdoor living space because it was
Yes.
a denser neighborhood.
Well, what we don't know is where this neighbor is in relation to this house, I guess. I missed that.
They're right there.
Just to clarify, is it Ann? Pam, is your house, if you look at the TV camera, right where my hand is? Okay, thank you very much. So let's go back to having a straw poll because we are wrestling with the fact that this is the first two-story addition in this neighborhood. How many people on the board or who is in support of a two-story element for this project? Who is in support? And who is not in support? So we have one that is not. Okay.
I'd like to mention where I think it'd be different if the two-story was on top of the hill. But at this point, as you're looking up the slope, you have a continuing slope, going back on the other side of the house. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it's on the top of the hill that's giving more an impact. So
I would also say that the house that's up here is a lot closer to the street. These houses on this side, because there's a natural drainage course, are all on the other side, so they're set back further. That there's a proximity to the main road. That's also an issue. So any other discussions for the board members? But Denise, thank you for bringing that up because we did need to talk about that.
Are we beyond the question stage now, or can we backtrack for a second?
Backtrack for a second.
Okay, because I'm really torn with this too, and so I'd like to ask the owner, builder, have you thought about possible alternatives, or possibly have you met with some of the neighbors who are concerned to figure out, how you can get what you want without making them so nervous?
I personally haven't met with the Langs. My wife has, and talked with them. When we were required to notice the 10 closest neighbors to our property, we did that according to your requirements, and my wife, we split the load there. My wife went south and I went north. And the people that we actually talked with, we had a number of real positive comments. The Langs are obviously opposed. The neighbor to my, where are we here? To my north, right here, expressed slight concern, but said it's not going to affect me much, and he was very nice and very happy about it. Glad to see the property improve. We have explored other options, but frankly, we purchased this home in this neighborhood because it has spectacular ocean views, and we want to capitalize on getting the best ocean view we can, and from that small little second-story addition, it really improves the view. So, beyond that, we have explored one-story options. This is our preferred option.
We're at a point where we as a board need to make a decision and move forward. So it's either... So do you want to make a motion? Is that what you're chiming in on? I'm just looking at the clock, and the next item started 5 minutes ago. So does someone want to float a motion?
Mr. Chair?
Glenn.
I'd like to make a motion for preliminary approval of the architecture and the landscaping making NPO findings for neighborhood compatibility, quality, architecture, consistency of appearance. Also, there's an enforcement case here, so that's also abating that. I think the architecture is really good, and I'd like to have the project to consent calendar, if that's okay. With the
We'll see who
rest of
seconds
the
it.
board- rest of the
We'll
board.
discuss it.
And as part of the motion, I need to include bringing in a sample of the roofing material, an actual sample, providing more sectional information, and updating the hardscapes on the architectural, and basically completing the plans. And that's my motion.
Is there someone who wishes to second that? Denise? Okay. First comment is full board versus consent. And I heard what Jim Zimmerman said, and I kind of would concur that it needs to come back to full board due to the retaining walls at this end that has not need to be resolved, but just they weren't clarified yet, and just to have extra eyes on it. But I think it's a really simple, there's no concern except the documentation is not there. So I'm tagging on, but that's just my perspective. But if other people are fine with
Mr. Chair, I think that's important to come back to the full board too, because we have two different styles of motor court here. I mean, it hasn't been really decided yet, and I'd like to see.
Okay, so it's back, returned back to full board for in progress. Any other discussion?
You could add something to the motion when it comes back. Study the proposed view onto the neighbor's yard from the balcony, and bring us some either landscaping ideas or ways that it can be turned, or study that.
Yeah, I'd like to actually add that too. Thank you for reminding me. If you could go up on your roof and point to Mrs. Lang's property and then study that as far as what screening options could be done, that would be helpful.
If you can add that to the motion. Is that okay with the seconder? You all right? Any other discussion? Oops. Tony.
The project will also need to show the stormwater management program, Tier 3 compliance, when you return for final.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
Are we coming back for progress, or can we come back just for final?
You can come back for final.
Okay.
But by us deeming it in progress, it gives us more flexibility to say we don't like the height of these retaining walls, and you say, I already did all my engineering. We say, well, you never had it resolved well when we gave it to preliminary, so that's why it's a loosey-goosey.
So on our own risk.
On your own risk.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now may I ask just one question? Before I leave?
Let me say that there's a 10-day appeal period for this project. Yes, go.
I just would like to acknowledge your concern. I don't know your name. I'm sorry. Bernie, your concern about being considerate to neighbors. I have the most respect for the Lang family as well. But when you ask the question about do we need to consider these projects on a case-by-case basis, I assume, perhaps incorrectly, that happens in every case. I can understand certainly their concern about having someone build a second story directly in front of their home. But my property and my home is entirely different than their current situation. So I would assume that you would look at projects on a case-by-case basis, and in terms of neighborhood compatibility and sensitivity.
We do.
We do. Okay.
All right.
Great.
All right. Sorry we're running a tad late, but that's okay. We're on to item 5, which is 3020 Serena Road. This is the first time we've heard this project, so I will read the project description. Serena Road, maybe. This proposal is for a new 766 square foot second story addition and a 359 square foot first floor addition to an existing 1,370 square foot one-story single-family residence. The existing 468 square foot attached two-car garage will be demolished and replaced with an attached 456 square foot two-car garage. The proposed total of 2,951 square feet on the 10,948 square foot lot is 77% of the maximum floor to area lot ratio. We have your name for the record in your presentation.
Yeah, my name's Dave Mendrow. I'm an architect. My firm is Newman Mendrow Anderleitis Architect. And this is Patrice Sermeyer, who is my client and also my wife. We have
full disclosure here.
Yeah, we have 4 kids in a small house, and so we're here to present to you a 2-story addition to our house for conceptual approval.
Were these drawings you brought or the ones that staff?
These are the ones I brought.
How are they different from the ones that staff has?
They're the same.
All right. Can you start by going through kind of public views, and then if we need to see the backyard views,
sure,
walk us through what we're looking at?
Well, our house is located in Samarkand off of Las Positas, if you guys are familiar with...
Most of us have visited the site.
Oh, you have?
That's
Great.
what we're supposed to do.
Great. So these are views of our house. Should I go through each one, or would you like to do this?
I want to say simply. Okay, that's the backyard.
This is the front yard. That's the backyard. Yeah.
Okay.
These are the views. I'm looking upside down, but looking to either side of the house.
Are you removing any trees that you could point out to us?
No,
Okay.
we're not removing any trees.
So front door, garage,
That's correct.
driveway coming down.
Mm-hmm.
This-
These are views across the street,
Across the
directly
street.
from our house. These are views of the basically the street directly adjacent to our house. Same thing. And these are views from the backyard showing the mountain views, and then in the next couple of shots, well, actually, yeah, these are the ones looking directly
Your
northeast,
backyard.
yeah.
This is
And-
neighborhood context.
Exactly. These are the 2 neighbors on either side of our house.
Okay.
And this is directly across the street, these 2 houses.
Is this Bob Clammer's house?
Actually, it's Vadim Shoe's house.
Okay.
And then the rest of them are just images of houses in the neighborhood that there's a lot of 2-story structures that are similar to what we're proposing. And so I took some pictures. They're all within, you
Okay.
know, 5 or 10 houses from ours.
Great.
Okay. So if you know our neighborhood, I'll just get started with the site plan. The nice thing about our neighborhood, and especially the houses on our side of the street, is that we have very nice mountain views going this direction. So the first priority in our design was to preserve the mountain views of the neighbors and, of course, our house as well. And also to preserve the privacy of the backyards, both for our house and for our neighbors as well. So what we're proposing is to put the addition on the front end of the house. What's nice about that is where we're putting the addition is adjacent to the neighbor to the south, to their garage. So really, we aren't impacting their living space or their backyard. Similarly, this location is even better for the neighbors to the north because they're up higher and we're farther away. We don't impact their solar access at all. And because there's an existing roof here, really we can't even see into the yard physically from the second-story addition. So as far as second reason for having the house here is the building heights. Our existing house is raised off the ground 3 to 4 feet, whereas our existing garage is on grade. So it's a split level configuration. And what we're proposing is to use that same strategy of a split level configuration where the new 2-story addition is on the ground and not raised up 4 feet. So essentially our new addition is about 2'6" higher than the already what the existing house is. You know, so it's not that much higher than our existing house by doing that. If we go to the setbacks, one other thing is I've also used a lower plate height. This is a 7'6" plate height, and they have a gable on the front end of the house so that the roof slopes down and is lower for the neighbor as well to the south. Setbacks, our existing house does not conform to the 6-foot setback requirement. By putting the house here, we're going to, on the first floor, we're going to conform and actually exceed the 6-foot setback to a lesser degree, but on the second floor, we actually pulled back a substantial portion of the project to 8'9", approximately. The style and the materials, what we have right now is a very modest kind of 40s tract house with not a lot of character. So what we're proposing for the addition is to use more of a shingle style vernacular, which allows us to have more detailing with the garage door, which has to be out in front, and the gate, and an entry with the trellis cover, and then a trellis integrated on the second floor. And the materials...
Let me put this in front real fast.
Okay. The materials we're proposing are cedar shingles with a natural stained color finish, and then the garage door and the entry doors and other wood trim would be a little bit darker brown finish. The stucco, which is more of a yellowish color now, we'd go with more of a beige color. The windows and doors would match existing, which is this blue color, as well as the fascia trim. The downspouts and the one skylight would be copper, or as an alternate, a dark brown color. And the roof would be tan-colored asphalt shingles, similar to what we have now, and then a clay tile for the entry.
Great. Thank you. Anything else you want to bring to our attention? It's a good presentation. You're fine.
Great.
All right.
So far, so good.
So far.
Whatever you need to know. Yeah.
All right. So I will open up public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Seeing nobody, I'll ask Tony if there's any letters.
Yes, we got one letter in opposition from Paula Westbury.
Okay. We'll go over it. You can read that later. It's, we're familiar with her concerns.
I neglected to mention that we have noticed all the neighbors, and we reviewed the plans and everything with the neighbor to the south, the one that it really affects, and they're supportive of the project.
Okay. So with that, I'll bring it back to the board for questions of the applicant. Anybody want to jump in? I'll jump in with a question. Are you planning on replacing the existing windows in the house?
No.
Like this window here, is that the existing window
That's
to
the
remain?
existing window, and it's a steel window, and it's similar in proportion to what we're doing, so
You're
we're
gonna
saving
keep it?
that. These windows we replaced previously,
Okay.
so those are already replaced.
All right. Questions from anybody else? It actually says demolish and remove bedroom. Window to be replaced, spelled weirdly.
Yes, that should have been taken off.
So you are going to save that window?
Yes, we've decided to save it. The problem is when we replace it, the steel windows, when you put the replacement window in, the width gets too narrow, and we'd have to reframe the whole wall.
What is the cantilever on the second floor? Is that 3 feet, 4 feet?
It's less than that. It's probably, I'd say 18 inches, maybe. Let's go to that's
1 foot 9 3/4.
Yeah.
And then also you have additional beams coming out with a trellis coming across.
Yeah, that's showing right here.
So totally it'd be out 2 feet and 3 feet?
About 3'9" approximately to the edge of the beams.
Oh, okay.
Actually, where's that elevation?
That's towards the back. If we go, it's showing right here.
Okay, questions from anybody? If there are no other questions, we'll just jump to comments, and people can pepper in some questions if they come up with stuff. So comments?
Mr. Chair.
Glenn.
Overall, I think it's a fantastic project. I think you really did a great job in incorporating the second floor sort of at a lower element. breaking it up, the masses was really done nicely. So, I mean, overall, really positive comments. The only question or comment I would have would be about this cantilever here and about these beams cantilevering, but there's really no visual support underneath them.
Yes.
So there may be ways of incorporating them a little higher, and detailing out a little differently, but overall, very positive.
Thanks.
Well, another option might be to don't cantilever it, and then recess the garage doors back, and then have the trellis coming across. You know, then the second floor won't look like it's kind of floating there.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Now, I'll chime in a little bit too. First of all, your architect did a tremendous job.
You're really worried about him, I can tell.
My thinking was, what was coming to my eye was the fact that the trellis was in front of the cantilever, and that if these were just little bump outs that were maybe 3 to 6 inches beyond this plane, and it just looked like these pieces of wood were supporting it, that would look nicer and leave off the trellis. And then if there was some way, and I'm not sure, if your finished floor is up here, perhaps you can pull this up so you can express more of a meat underneath the garage door header to sort of make it look like I'm strong enough to support what I'm holding. You know, it's a fussy detail, but it's workable. And then here, my comment here is this window looks so out of place, and I know as soon as you replace the window and make it all wider window, you're redoing the lateral across the front.
Right.
I'm thinking of adding shutters here, but it's the only window with shutters, and so it just is what it is. But but in all your drawings, this looks so lonely.
Yeah, it looks worse.
Well, that's. Can I say something?
Sure.
Okay. In the drawings, it does look that way, but that's because there's all that space underneath, and that's actually like landscaped. And so when you see it in a picture, like in a photograph, it doesn't like. I mean, just this by itself with the old house, it looked like it popped out. But because we have like a bunch of native landscaping that's relatively tall around it, it doesn't have that feeling to it. And we don't want to replace the window also just because it's really nice size and it works really nicely.
Okay. Any other comments?
I don't know if it's a requirement, but one of the things you can do, I turned it on, I remember, maybe adding a flower box underneath the window on the top with little beams underneath it, just as something cute. You know, it adds a little more interest there, and kind of tie in with the beams you have below. So it kind of gives a bit of an integration of the two different elements. But that's the only suggestion I thought I have.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any other comments from people? Bernie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I pretty much agree with everything. I like the color board and the materials and your sensitivity to the levels and the height. My only thing that I'm thinking maybe you could study is
the TV camera.
The apparent, I guess, massing of that front window. It's the first thing that the neighbors are going to see from the street. So, but everything else, I think it really is beautifully done.
Thanks.
I mean, to follow up on what Bernie's saying, that if this element came up, seemed like 6 inches, and made this look funny, this also can come up 6 or 8 inches because there's no relationship. It's just, you know, because this is important, the way that this form looks. So, I mean, there's solutions there.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I toyed with that, and at some point, my wife said it was time to get this in. So I will definitely study the beams, and I know I'm aware that they're defying gravity right now, and I'll take a look at that and see what we can do. And I definitely hear you on that.
So is there any other discussion, or are we ready for a motion?
One more comment, just to follow up on you said, if these beams that stick out, if there was a distance like this before it hit the top of the garage door, then it would denote that there's a beam underneath that it's sitting on. So
yeah, I think that correlates with some of the other comments, and we'll study that carefully, definitely.
Okay.
So is there any other discussion or a motion? Oh, I guess I can... Go for
Thank
it.
you. I'd like to make a motion for preliminary approval as a basis for working drawings to return to the full board with the following comments. Number one, study and, what's the word I want? Well, just return with a revision in the front area above the garage, that front facade. Cantilever, thank you. And anybody have any other comments to add to the motion?
Is there a person who wants to second it? Well, she first, we need a second, then we can have a discussion.
Okay, I second it.
Okay. You want to say something?
And study the window treatment of the above.
The treatment of the second floor window.
To add interest,
Add that to the motion, please, Gloria.
I just want to ask the board's question. Do we feel it needs to come back to full board, or is the board okay, comfortable with sending it to consent? I feel I'm okay with it at consent too, because this is such a fine-tuning kind of hypersensitive that I don't think it needs full board. Is that? But you.
Well, just a question, clarification. So, did you notice that this will be the largest portion of the building is going to be shingles? And I don't know if that neighbor had already. I don't think it. Are there any other houses there that have shingles on the side?
Yeah, the one next to Maureen's house.
Yeah, and then there's 3 Craftsman houses on our street too.
Maybe if we could add that if we're going to go to consent, that you could bring us photographs to further exemplify examples of the shingle siding in the neighborhood.
Is that all right with the person who seconded it?
Fine.
Okay. So you're all right with it, final on consent? Preliminary approval with final on consent.
We already have the color board, and it's beautiful.
Looks very beautiful.
Thanks.
Any other discussion before we call for a vote?
Chair, did we make any findings?
Then we'd like to add the neighborhood compatibility findings of the size and the bulk and scale, the quality of the architecture, and what's the last one?
Quality building materials?
Yeah, I said quality, consistency and appearance with the neighborhood.
Okay. And with that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I will announce a 10-day appeal period, and you just put yourself back on to consent when you're ready.
Great. Thanks.
And the board likes, or the city likes a flat color board, so you can make a color Xerox of that, or somehow something for them to come in. We'll do that. And we're on our last item of the agenda, which is item 6, which is 575 West Mountain Drive.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
You want to announce your name for the record?
I'm Jill Stein,
And
David Unger.
and
Is this just one plan?
it's just one plan.
Okay.
Do you have a second plan? I thought there was a copy from the prior presentations.
Why don't you tell us what's changed? I think most of us here are familiar with it. Oh, wait. Yeah, we're all... you know what? Let me take a 1-minute break because one of the members did step out. And let's pause for minutes.
Sure.
So we'll resume the meeting.
Okay, hi. So I'm Jill Stein, and this is David Unger, and we're the co-owners of the property. And I have come before you a couple of times, and I have some new materials to present to you today. The board has been split on the occasions that we've come to present a proposal for this. We bought the house in May, and we inherited a zoning violation, actually 3 of them. One was in regards to a gate that has been removed. The other was in regards to a storage shed, which was too close to the setback line. And then the question of uncovered parking. The parking requirements were changed back in April, and I think you're familiar with the ordinance that the City Council passed at that time, and that we feel we qualify for in terms of that exception of 2 uncovered spaces. And there are a number of different items that we have to satisfy so that the uncovered spaces are to be in the back, they are to be screened from public view. We have the right proportion ratio of building to open space, and there's an issue of the location of the parking and the design of the screening. And we've really kind of racked our brains about trying to better satisfy this number 5 here on the ordinance for the exception, which is that you will review and approve of the location and design. I don't think there's any disagreement about the interpretation of the law. I think you probably know it pretty well, and it seems pretty clear. Yet this is the first case that's come before you, and I know you have concerns about setting a precedent for other residences to be able to ask for this exception of 2 uncovered spaces, but the City Council approved of that ordinance in order to be able to provide homeowners like ourselves the right to have 2 cars and have them uncovered if they satisfy all of these points that are part of that ordinance. So perhaps there was an issue with the screening, and I had provided some pictures before and wanted to provide some additional pictures and a little anecdote as well. But the parking is here, and we had hired an architect to draw the plans for us because we didn't have any plans of our property when we bought it. There was nothing on record. So we have both of our neighbors here. And when you're talking about parking in this location and screening it from public view, we are assuming that you want it screened from both of our neighbors. There are some very distant neighbors across another street and sort of a hillside this way, and then anybody who might be coming up the street. I don't know if you visited our property. I overheard the last homeowner that you had gone out to see the location, so perhaps you've come by our location, but if not, this is what it looks like from the street. So this is Mountain Drive. You can't really even see the house from the street. But
we can just put all of them in one location, and the TV guy will zoom in, and we'll just put each new one on top.
Okay, great. And then this is the Mountain Drive with our driveway, and this is a closer sort of view of our driveway. Here is up on the roof looking at Mountain Drive, so you can see that you can't even see the street. So it's hard for you to see the house from the street or vice versa. But if you came up our driveway, you would see the front and side of our house that looks like this, and the long driveway, which is coming up from Mountain here and extends far into the back of the property, and so it wraps around in this fashion. And here is another photo from the roof where we're looking down on the parking area here, and you can see how well it's screened on this side from any neighbor being able to see into our yard. There is this distant neighbor who's really out here, but if you're at ground level, neither that neighbor is seen nor do they see us. So here's the cars parked there, and then you can see even better here that there's no neighbor to the back side of us that's going to see it. And here is looking at the parking area from this side of the property, and you can see again the good coverage. And then this is a photo of standing right in the parking area and looking across this way where you cannot see through the foliage to that neighbor there. So that, we believe, really provides for this ordinance to the letter. And
can we borrow that? And
yes.
pass that? Pass that way. Okay.
Today, we actually were working at home, which is customary, and I noticed that there was someone pulled up in our driveway, and lo and behold, it was Brian Grunbeck, the city building inspector. And so he had come because there's an enforcement case on this, and we wanted to show him what we had done. And he saw that the gate had been removed in the front, and that the storage shed had been moved from the setback and was in the right place. And he saw where our cars were parked and how they were screened. And we were talking in the beginning. He was parked out in the front of our house, and he could not have seen the cars had our gate not been open. And it's open, and so he could see it, but only once he was there. But he came out to the back.
Well,
and
let me just, he was in the driveway and writing a note to us because he didn't think we were home. So he was in our driveway and could not see our cars, which were parked
Right.
in the back.
So he was about to come up to the door and hang this to come back another time.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. And essentially what he said to us, he also looked at the ordinance and said, oh, this is new, and the city has allowed for uncovered parking. I'm always the last to know, but I'd be happy to try to clear this. I'm busy with a lot of work in this area, but he was, coming to follow up on the zoning report, and we were preparing to do the same. And he said that he felt that we satisfied all of the terms of the ordinance, and that there was no reason to build further screening of the parking area in the back, that there would be no purpose to having any further screening unless we wanted to put it up, that there was really no way that it was visible by the public and not even by himself, and that we had satisfied the criteria laid out by the council in their ordinance.
Okay.
So we're hoping to resolve this. I think you know that we have dreams and plans as any new homeowners would, but we don't have those drawings to bring to you today, and we may at some future point. But I hope the evidence is adequate to satisfy your opinions. I know that you may not be in favor. You may have different beliefs or values in regards to the ordinance, but we feel that it would be fair to have this approved as it does follow the ordinance in every way that we understand it and that the building inspector understands it.
Thank you. Great. Any public comment? Seeing nobody, I'll ask staff if there are any letters.
Yes, we do have a letter from Paula Westbury.
Probably in support?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Can you pass me that ordinance then, if you're done looking at it?
I think
Okay.
she's okay with not having to construct, do more construction on the site.
Correct. Okay, questions for the applicant from the board? If there's no questions, does anybody want to have any comments? Okay, and I think everybody should have a comment on this one, so if you don't speak, I will call on you.
What shocks me as I see these pictures is a very different experience than seeing this plan, because there's no landscaping drawn on this plan. And my feeling is, had you come in with a plan showing all this landscaping, you might not have had it as... No, it's not. If you had landscaping included on this, it probably wouldn't have gone through as much as you have. So, my comment to this, and I don't know any future people coming to the board, is the more information that they put on these plans, the better, because it just seems striking to see this. And to me, there's just no landscaping, so obviously there's concern. So that's my only comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I still want to read the motion from the previous meeting.
I forgot about that part. Go for it.
Basically, the comment was to study incorporating a two-car carport or garage or other alternative for the uncovered parking. So that was just a comment from the previous meeting.
What was the vote before on that?
Vote was 6-1.
Okay.
And Denise was the only one that opposed that motion.
Okay.
There was a straw vote prior to that about who could support the 2 uncovered parking spaces as presented. It was 3-4 opposed.
Okay. So what's your personal comment?
It hasn't changed since the previous meeting. I understand it's screened. I understand that the discussion about the whole 2 uncovered parking spaces in front of our board months ago, we talked about this at length, and we had every example, or we thought of every scenario, and we only really discussed the option of having 2 uncovered parking spaces on small restrained lots. So that's kind of how I'm following, is there's no reason you couldn't build a garage on your lot. So I just don't want to go down that avenue of saying, yeah, we'll just allow, an option to the zoning ordinance on larger lots that can easily accommodate a garage.
Okay.
Are we allowed to respond to that?
No, let us all go through
Okay.
here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, initially I was concerned about, there's a lot of room to park in the rear, but in inclement weather, I think you're going to be parking in the front, and it says, not allowed to park in the front yard. Then again, looking at the landscaping and how it's screened, I don't think it really matters at this point, if you, say, park the car in the front because of the screening.
Okay. Other people's comments? If they haven't changed, you can still say they haven't changed and reiterate them, or however.
This is so troublesome to me. I understand that the intention of the original ordinance change was what Glenn said, basically for constrained lots. However, it doesn't say that in this point-by-point sheet here, and so they have complied with all this, and maybe that was just an oversight, and it should have probably been written differently. But it's pretty tough to say they can't do this when they basically comply to everything on that piece of paper.
Well, they still have to get our support.
Yeah, but I mean, it isn't visible from anywhere, clearly, by these latest photos. They have already expressed their intention that down the line they're going to remodel the house. I know we're not supposed to take people's word for it, but I think it's. I don't believe that they should be forced to go through the cost of using the materials, the raw materials, to build something that is going to, in the end, be changed and ripped down anyway. That doesn't make any sense to me environmentally. And I see this as a temporary solution to their problems, which they have already said it is. I feel they comply to this ordinance.
Okay.
Hasn't changed.
And that is, again, I forgot.
Oh, I'm in favor of the proposal.
All right.
I have a question to the board.
Please.
What is the advantage of having a 2 covered space as opposed to not having a 2 covered space?
We didn't create this rule. It came from planning staff, and they brought it upon us, and we were, as a board, pretty much, why are you doing this? Because we've been beaten over the head so many times on providing a 2-car covered parking space, and now you're now providing this uncovered scenario, and they gave the reasons for constrained lots and how it's good for the environment, to building materials and all this kind of stuff. Why
To have it not covered.
To have it not covered is a positive thing. Maybe you get a couple lead points, your little bonus built green kind of thing. So that's kind of the direction staff would like to see residential projects go, provided it does not become an eyesore to the neighborhood, and that was the caveat.
And Mr. Chair, the provision to allow uncovered parking is what's new. The requirement for the city for all single-family residences to have 2 covered spaces goes back, I don't know how far, many decades. And I think it was thought at the time that a nice city should have nice amenities and you should have covered parking. I mean, like I said, that goes back a long time. And with this recent change to the ordinance through this MPO review process, it was always staff's, intent and to have some kind of a discretionary review for uncovered parking. We at one time thought it would be a modification to the zoning ordinance to do that, or some sort of a waiver that could be granted to do that, but it ended up as being a design review trigger. But if you want to provide the uncovered parking, 2 uncovered spaces, it would be a trigger for SFDB approval.
Okay.
So it was always going to be a case-by-case discretionary approval.
Bernie, if you don't mind me calling on you next, you were on that committee.
I really appreciate the perseverance of your coming back and showing us photos, but I just don't think that this is the solution here. I'm sorry, but I agree with Glenn.
So I lost track on that on the voting, so let's do a straw vote.
I'm not sure what Jim wants.
Oh, Jim, have you commented? I think you did. What is your... turn around your microphone. You can ask people whether or not you'll support this proposal as it is, as presented.
I think I can support it.
You can support
as
it.
it is.
So with that, let's do a straw vote of who can support the proposal for the uncovered parking spaces. Who can support it? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. And there's 2 against, and I'll abstain. But that's okay, because I'm supposed to not create ties. So with that, would someone who was in support of this create a motion?
I'd like to make that motion.
All right.
That we approve this as submitted. And that's it.
Can we tag on, we appreciate the applicant's tenacity and perseverance?
Perseverance, yes. And that we want to warn the public that this is case by case. And we'll make the MPO findings for neighborhood compatibility. And, it's already built, so we can't talk about quality of materials.
But due to the obvious landscaping that
Landscaping screens, the uncovered parking is screened from public view from all sides, which is in keeping with the ordinance.
Okay. And I need a seconder. I forgot if someone seconded that yet. Second by Aaron. Bernie.
Okay, yeah, and to just jump on to what Denise said. So by this getting approved, everybody on the board realizes that they come back with plans for the remodel. They have told us, now, it might change ownership, but they have told us that they are going to provide covered parking. But by passing this and allowing this, you're saying that they don't have to do that even with a new remodeling project. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Is that correct, Tony, that this now uncovered parking space runs forever on this property, and now someone else can do a 4,000 square foot house addition and keep the parking? Because it's...
The whole project would be up for review at that time.
Oh, 80.
Even the whole package, but the parking, they'd still have to make sure that we approve it no matter how it comes before us.
Well, just like every project that comes here, you review the entirety of the project.
It could be a one-story project with no parking.
So the answer to your question from staff is that the next time a project comes up, it's subject to review. Even though that this is a permitted condition, if you do something else and we feel like you should be providing or the next board, whoever the next board is, that is part of their discretion to ask for. Okay, Brian?
Would any project have to go before the board? that they do here? I mean, what if they...
If it's a one-story and it's under 17
Yeah, so
feet
they
and
can't
blah, blah, blah.
I think you could put a percentage of addition. If it exceeds 50%.
The percentage is based upon the city ordinance, which is 85%. Or is it 70? 75, I thought it was.
It says 80%.
85, that's fine.
85% of the allowable, or 80% of the allowable FAR.
It'd be a percentage of the addition. Exceeding 50% or 50% of the square footage of the house.
Well, the proposal, the motion on the board is approving the project as is.
Yes.
And there's no added verbiage about requirements, about it having to have a two-car garage based upon percentages of a future addition. That there's no strings attached.
Can we discuss that?
You can. It might affect your vote, but it's...
Well, I think that a covered two-car garage should be put in before an addition's put in the house. We're passing this to allow two uncovered parking places. And my feeling is if they come back and want to add on to the house, I think it should be the two covered parking places first.
Unfortunately, if I correct the staff, we can't do that.
That's how this controversy is what it's all about.
Well, can I just ask a question?
Yes, you may. I'm sorry.
If we came back at such a time with a second story or a pool or this or that, wouldn't the whole thing be up for discussion at that point? And you could say, yes, you could put the second story on, and we need you to build a garage? I mean, can't you, at that time when we come back, put down your foot and say, this is what we want you to do or not want you to do?
That's what staff is saying is, yes, we have the discretion.
Right. So
that's provided you design a project that is triggered that requires this review.
Right, but that would be a big thing. A small thing, we wouldn't see you, and you wouldn't really, it wouldn't be of concern.
Correct.
A larger project would have some influence and could affect the neighborhood and the community, and then we'll be back with you.
Okay.
You're still the owner.
Well, we hope to be for a long, long time.
Okay. I think we're ready for a vote, if there's any other discussion. But I'll call for a vote. All in favor of Denise's proposal or motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
2 opposed, and I'll abstain. So you're approved.
Well, thank you, Board, for your time in discussing this with us, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. We're going to keep these photographs as part of the record?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. All right. And I will close the meeting for tonight. See you all in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.